You knew this video was coming. They did it again, man. 343 nerfing the movement in Halo Infinite for reasons I will never fully understand. But I swear, man, every time they do this, I'm out on Twitter like I'm dueling, like it's Yu-Gi-Oh out here.
Now end this! You triggered my trap card!
Okay, now I understand this is a controversial topic and it needs to be addressed fairly. So casual fans, if you're watching, before you collectively crucify me, just, pitchforks down, give me a second. I'm not just going to talk about sliding in this video. I'm going to cover everything in this article, give a full review, because there's actually a lot of really interesting, really exciting changes coming to this game. A lot of W's from 343 in this article. So, big thank you to them for finally addressing some very important things in this game. If you want to see my full review, you can skip right to that if you don't want to listen to me talk about slides, but this is important to me. We're going to break down what they've said about it, the difference between curb sliding and snap sliding. Let's just kind of talk about everything and what exactly is changing. Okay, first, let's just read the dev note. This is actually the updated dev note. They did a swift little edit to it. Here's the original, just off of Twitter. Movement is always tricky to balance. We want to allow players to express their movement skill in matches, but we don't want that movement tech to completely break maps or create unpredictable gameplay flow. For example, curb sliding, cool that they're actually using that term, and its current uses have been fun to watch, but hasn't been interrupting gameplay flow too much. On the other hand, snap sliding allows players to make jumps that could truly break game flow, including having players jump from top mid to bases on Aquarius. We'll talk about what that means in just a little bit. Now, they updated the end of the note to remove the Aquarius part and just say, on the other hand, snap sliding allows players to make jumps that could truly break game flow without providing any examples or anything. So before we dive into that, what's a curb slide? What's a snap slide? A curb slide is a fast slide performed off any sort of ledge or object in your environment. This could be something as low to the ground as a little trash can or something as tall as your full jump height. Depending on your execution, you can curb slide off of it. Now, the tall ledges give you the biggest boosts possible, but they're also the most difficult to slide off of. You need a lot of precision, a lot of skill to hit that consistently, whereas the low ledges are pretty accessible, especially considering this tech has been around since the game came out. If you're a dedicated player, you've probably hit a curb slide before, maybe even accidentally. You just sprint off a little ledge, time crouch, you get a boost. It's very straightforward. Now, a snap slide, on the other hand, is a fast slide performed off an incline, like a ramp or uneven terrain. For example, on live fire, the whole map is full of uneven terrain. So technically, if you land on the right spot and snap slide with good execution, you can snap slide all around the ground on live fire. To do this, you need momentum. You got to land on that incline or slope with momentum, and then you have to turn very precisely or snap with either your mouse or your control sticks, and then perfectly time your crouch to slide and then jump to carry that momentum forward. Now, depending on your execution, there are a whole variety of results you can get when snap sliding. You can get a big boost, you can get half or a fraction of that, you can get a dead slide, go absolutely nowhere. This is a very tricky tech to fully understand and master, and it's part of the reason why it remains niche at the moment. Unlike the curb slide that's pretty accessible at a basic level, snap sliding, even at a basic level, can be kind of challenging to perform. It takes a lot of precision to fully understand. It's also much riskier than curb sliding. When you jump out to the ramp to set it up, you got your reticle committed while you're waiting to turn and snap. This is all free time that somebody could just shoot you and kill you for free on top of the moment you launch out, and then you're flying out in like an uncontrolled fashion. You better have your reticle ready to fire a shot. You're just kind of asking to die in most cases, which is what makes this tech so niche, and the only people who actually use it effectively are the ones who have put a lot of hours into it to understand when and how to use it. I myself it took some time, but I finally realized that it's really the subtleties of the snap slide that makes it effective, and the way that it complements the other movement like curb sliding to give you slightly faster rotations and slightly, better timing in certain situations. And this is what a lot of pros are starting to, gravitate towards, like Druck and Bound and Lucid, are in subtle ways applying snap slides to gain a small advantage for the risk that they're taking. So then, if snap sliding is more difficult, riskier to pull off, and currently has less of an impact on the pace of play than the curb slide, then why is 343 patching snap sliding? They're patching it because of Milkway. This is Milkway. He's a Halo trick jumper. I'm also not really sure if he's a human being. He might honestly be a robot, because the stuff that he does in his videos is near inhuman. It's nearly impossible. He's pulling off feats of frame precision that is equivalent to tasks. If you ever heard of tool-assisted speedrunning, you can see it in like fighting games like Melee. That's what this looks like to me. And yes, he's on a map alone. He's got nobody shooting at him, so he's got the freedom to, showcase the true potential of this tech, which from my perspective, I think it's pretty cool that there's so much potential, latent potential in this tech that you can show off. The issue is that the world doesn't understand this. If Milkway does this and throws it on Twitter, the world doesn't know the difference between Milkway and a pro player. They make the assumption that that's just gameplay in Halo Infinite, and it has shock value. So the issue is, Milkway, and I love, your content and how much you've inspired some of our core community to continue to grind. You are also confusing the masses with shock value. And that's not to say that some of these slides can't be applied in practical ways in an actual game, because some of this is being used by pros or by myself. Milkway even has, little tricks that I picked up on with my own practice time, but he actually lines up his jumps with walls so that he hits the wall before he hits the ramp and then snaps and boosts. Something about hitting the wall actually like pockets your momentum, and you get an extra boost if you perfectly hit the snap after. So I've learned a few tricks that you can apply, in-game in certain circumstances. But when you think practicality, that's the other big, question behind this. How much of what he's doing is actually practical in a game? For example, the jump that 343 brought up to justify the removal of snap sliding, they said it lets you hit jumps you shouldn't be able to hit, breaks the flow of maps. This is the example. Top mid to bases on Aquarius. This was pulled directly from a Milkway video. He hits a crazy jump from top mid to a base. I have never seen this jump hit in a game in my life. Never by a pro, by anyone. What's funny and frustrating about this is that's not even a snap slide. That's a curb slide plus a thrust. If you're a developer and you're removing the snap slide and your justification is by providing an entirely different technique, what are you telling me? Are you saying that you don't understand the difference between the two? What's being nerfed? Is it the curb slide or the snap? Like, I'm confused now, right? So later they took this sentence out. They said they still thoroughly tested it. They think it breaks the flow of gameplay. So then what was the objective behind this sentence? Now what I'm thinking is that you purposely put that there for shock value, this crazy example, to make the casual fans who don't understand, to stir them up and have them bandwagon on your decision to remove this mechanic as if they're fixing the game for these casual fans who don't know any better, right? So that's just not really genuine. So something fishy is going on here, right? Like, let me give you the benefit of the doubt and say that this is a crazy jump and players shouldn't be hitting it. Is it even practical to hit, though? Under any circumstances would you do this? Like, why would you jump from top mid to a base? Halo is about positioning and map control. If you're P2, they're spawning yellow side. Why not stay there and hold the angle and keep them on yellow side and form a perimeter? Like, why would anybody go for this crazy jump? And they're also not going to hit it because I've never seen it in a real game before. So it's just, I don't know. It's just frustrating. As a fan, it's frustrating. Basically, nobody really wins with a decision like this. Maybe the developers, I guess. But, like, the dedicated fans definitely don't win. The ones who are putting the time into learning and mastering the snap slide and taking advantage of that little nuance, that creativity, whether you're a trick jumper, whether you're a pro player, that just disappears. That whole layer is now gone. So they don't win. The casuals don't win either because snap sliding wasn't affecting the casuals to begin with. It's so niche and only, the select pro players are really using it, the trick jumpers, that the casuals aren't going to notice a difference in their gameplay. So telling them that the slide is being nerfed almost, sounds kind of like not genuine. They're going to think the game is, maybe slower or something. It's going to be the same for the casuals, right? So, like, I just don't know who wins. And this whole conversation of it's just not Halo and it breaks the flow of maps or flow of gameplay, like, it's very subjective, very nuanced topic. If something was fundamentally broken, then people would be complaining. You would hear about it by now. Take us back a year ago. 343 probably would have said the same thing about the curb slide being, breaking flow of maps and being unpredictable. Once we understood how it worked and where you could curb slide, the unpredictability sort of went away. And Halo is unique in that it has a time to kill, a higher time to kill than a game like Call of Duty. So simply just being fast isn't as big of an advantage as it is in other games. Positioning beats movement speed in Halo in the end of the day all the time, right? Just because you can rotate fast doesn't mean it's smart to do so. If your opponent has good positioning, they'll turn the fight around on you. If you're rotating too fast, you're leaving your team. Halo's a team game, right? You still got to work together, still got to take advantage of all of those core principles. In the end of the day, it's still Halo, right? It's just the timing skill gap, which timing has been a skill gap in every Halo. There's just more depth to the skill gap of timing. Now, there's more to understand and learn, and I think Personally, I think that's a good thing, especially in the long run. There should be a lot to learn in the video games that we play in every category, while also still being accessible for everyone else. And I think Infinite does a good job at that balancing act. But basically, the snap slide has not been illustrated as a problem. People are not complaining about it, but 343 are going to remove it anyway. I think they're preemptively trying to counter something they think could be a problem in the future. I get where they're coming from. I just wish they put more focus on combating real problems than actually trying to, neutralize something that isn't a problem yet. I wish they would just kind of wait and see. Also, don't think that completely removing the nuance is a good play. I would rather they nerfed it instead of removed it completely, so at least maybe there's a bit of an advantage for the people who put the time in. Or if you're going to remove something, like, maybe have something else. Like, it would be sick to have spring jumping in Halo Infinite. That would be less intrusive as far as, rotations are concerned, but it would fundamentally change pro play without really hurting casuals, right? So maybe, get rid of something, replace it with something else. I don't know. These are just my thoughts on all of this. In the end of the day, 343 makes their decisions, whether or not we agree or disagree or are happy about them. At least the game is still going to maintain some sort of movement tech. We still got curb sliding. It's just a shame. And it's also, it makes it hard to, to ever want to invest time into learning this stuff, because you never know when they're just going to take it away from you. Anyway, what was that? Like 10 minutes on just the snap slide? I'll chill. I got nothing more to say. I'm sure there's some people who are happy about the decision. They're, excited that these movement changes are happening. Either way, it is what it is. Let's move on. Let's cover this full article and talk about some stuff that I'm actually pretty excited about. Okay, we got some reading to do. We'll start with the plasma pistol. So many players reported that the plasma pistol was underperforming against Spartans, especially when using its overcharged shot. To help the overcharged shot track as expected in mid to close range, we've updated its value slightly in the winter update. We also noticed the base shot was not seeing much use, so we've increased the damage of the base shot to make it a more viable option for players. I don't mind this change personally. My only worry with this is the last thing you want with the plasma pistol is to basically get what we had in Halo 5. With the plasma pistol, the H5 plasma pistol the tracking was so good on it at such a long range that it was almost like a sniper rifle. Like, the thing was practically a power weapon, and at a high level, it was kind of a nuisance to deal with because of it. With Infinite, there's a fine line, right? If the tracking is too strong, and it becomes overpowered and too easy to use, and that could be a problem. Even in casual play, it could be a problem. That said, I will say it is a relatively inconsistent weapon. In competitive, it does still get a lot of use, but I do see some inconsistency in the tracking in, like, close to mid-range. It's nice that they're specifying close to mid and not long range. You don't really want that crazy long range tracking. It's just not how the weapon's supposed to be used. I'll also say that the base shot is definitely weak. You can spam it super quickly, though. Some of the higher level players will spam that thing like a machine gun, and they'll make up for it. So we'll see how things play out. Looks like they're increasing like 20 to 28 base damage, which is significant as far as just numbers go. I don't fully, understand what all this equates to, right? Like angular velocity from 20 to 35 degrees, guided angular velocity 50 to 70. So increased homing mid to short range, and then you've got slightly more damage on the base shot. I'm okay with it. Let's see how it goes. Pulse Carbine. Even as players have gotten more proficient with the Pulse Carbine, they have not been as successful in short to mid-range as we would like. To help with this, we've updated the tracking to help it out in shorter range. To help balance out its power, though, we'll be reducing the tracking at longer range. These changes should help the player land shots more consistently in short to mid-ranges, while slightly reducing the effectiveness at longer ranges. Interesting. Once again, we got some numbers, right? Increased angular guided velocity 25 to 35, 50 to decreased angular 50 to 30. So right now the plasma carbine is pretty strong, I would say, in competitive play, specifically at like a mid to long range on a map like Catalyst or even Aquarius on like top mid. If you land a good burst with the pulse carbine, that opponent's shields are completely gone. Like, it just melts shields. It does a lot of work for you. It really homes, really tracks at mid range. So I like the fact that they're reducing the tracking at the longer range, but by buffing it at shorter, basically they're completely flipping the priorities in this weapon. Like, I think this weapon's going to feel fundamentally different to use now, and we're going to be prioritizing it in shorter ranges. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I don't know if that would make it very powerful, like almost like the alternative to a shotgun or something like that, like a closer range, if we're going to see it more in play. It's not a very skillful weapon in the end of the day, considering how much it homes, so hopefully it's not too powerful, but we'll wait and see, I guess. Not sure. Commando. One of the most common pieces of feedback we've seen is that aiming on the VK78 Commando felt loose, especially at shorter range. To help increase its effectiveness up close, we've slightly increased bullet magnetism and slightly reduced the high minimum error. We've seen this help players finish off targets at closer range during internal playtests, so we're eager to see how this plays out in the wild. This is going to be interesting, especially in competitive play, and especially when we talk about the BR later. The Commando is definitely, it's got lower aim assist than most of the other weapons. It does feel kind of loose at a closer range. Sometimes it's easier to lose control of. But in the hands of a good player, this thing shreds. It's got a faster time to kill than the BR. Some of the better players, like the pros, have really mastered it at this point. Like, you'll see somebody like Lucid or Falcated, let's say, just completely, get perfect kills, shred through people at close range, at long range. They've kind of, learned the quirks of it. So now if you're buffing short range and you're giving this gun to somebody like Lucid, like, this thing's going to be insanely powerful. That said, though, I think that there's maybe room to increase its effectiveness. What this means is that it's going to be very prioritized. I need to pick this up way more now as well. It's a precision weapon in the end of the day. It will always have that skillful element to it, so I don't really mind, too much that we're seeing a slight buff here. I just think pick this thing up, right? It's going to become a big deal, especially now that the BR is getting nerfed. Now for the BR. It says we want the BR to remain the versatile weapon we know and love, but we have also noticed it's been performing a bit too well, making it not feel as rewarding as it should. In the winter update, we wanted to raise the skill ceiling on landing the final kill shot, as well as reduce its effectiveness at range from the hip. These changes should help make the kills of the BR75 feel even more rewarding. I actually like this change. I'm pretty excited to see how this plays out, to be honest. I do like the BR the way that it is. It does feel pretty good, but in the end of the day, as a starting weapon, you really want that starting weapon to, yes, not only feel very reliable, your trusty, main gun, but you want it to be skillful as well. And I feel like the BR in its current state, it's got a healthy amount of bullet magnetism in comparison to some of the other precision weapons. The BR is definitely the easier one to use, to the point where you really start to prioritize it over everything else. You don't feel like you need to pick up other weapons as often. Now I'm going to feel like I need to pick up the Commando more. And I also, like they said, you get a more rewarding kind of feeling from landing that kill shot. So very curious to see how this plays out. One of the biggest issues I have with the current BR is its range. It's extremely powerful at long ranges. It just laser beam. Like, think Behemoth, for example, when we used to play that in competitive. It's a laser beam across the map at all times. You got no cover. You're just getting shredded by this thing. Now, I don't know if this change will fundamentally affect that, right? Because it says they're just changing effectiveness at range from the hip. So not in scope. So if you're scoping, you still might have that kind of laser beam capability. And I guess we'll see how that plays out. My only real worry with changing the BR is I've got like PTSD from Halo 5's BR. Halo 5's BR, if you remember, started very strong. It was a little too powerful. So later down the line, they nerfed it, but they nerfed it to the ground. And the result was it felt super inconsistent and it was not fun to use anymore. So they tried to rebalance it one more time and they still didn't quite get it right. It just didn't quite feel as consistent as the other weapons in the sandbox. And basically it killed the BR. And by the end of Halo 5, people weren't even using the BR. They'd pick it up to maybe have something in the back pocket, but it just became kind of an irrelevant weapon. And you don't want to see, I mean, obviously this is the main gun, so you wouldn't see that. I just hope that whatever change they make to it, it stays consistent, right? You don't see more blank shots. You don't see more people complaining about headshots not registering. Of course, they're going to try to make the headshot more challenging, so we got to give it some time to play out. But hopefully they find a sweet spot. Hopefully we have a skillful weapon in the end of the day, because that means that the combat dance becomes more exciting, right? The strafing, all your mechanics, you have more room for outplayability if landing that final kill shot is more challenging. Now for frag nades, another change I'm excited about. The frag nade has received feedback that it's a bit too effective and that throwing one just before dying results in easier trades than intended. In order to help address these issues, we've increased the detonation time slightly. This will give players a bit more time to react to a grenade that is landed near them. It'll also reward players with better placed grenades. Now, I think they could change even more than just this personally, but I really do like this detonation timer change, mainly because, like they said, you can throw one after you die and still get that trade kill. What frustrates me more is players who just look at the ground and throw an instant bank nade when they're in trouble and somehow still manage to kill you or turn around to fight. Like, you shoot somebody in the back, he turns, bank nades, rips your shields off and headshots you before you can even, finish your 4-shot. Like, the current state of bank nading is just, it's so powerful and so versatile that it's too much. It's like a get out of jail free card. So I like that they're going to change this slightly, just a 0.2 second change. could be enough to fundamentally change how we use nades and how we time them and whatnot. So that'll be interesting to get used to. I like that. I think you could also consider, you know, things like the blast radius or the damage that they do, or the way that they, I know people say they tend to magnetize sometimes to players. They're a little weird. They're a little inconsistent at times, so it's you know, upsetting that they didn't talk about that, or talk about, say, like the shock nades or the spike nades and how powerful those are. Like, I think they could do a little bit of tweaking to other nades in the sandbox, but this is a good start. We'll go from here. 343, please, we can still save this, okay? You still got it one day. We can delete this. I'll forget that it ever happened. We'll all forget. We can move on. We'll be happy. Okay, just do it. Get rid of it. Come on. This would be such a W article without this one paragraph, man. Disruptor. The Disruptor has started to see more use as we've gotten further into Halo Infinite's lifespan, but it still isn't doing as well as we'd hoped. To help with this, we're updating the ammo count to help players close out kills a little more easily. We also spotted reports of the damage over time effect being inconsistent. We'll be working to get an improvement out in the future update. I agree that the damage over time is a little bit inconsistent, so hopefully they do fix that. Looks like, unfortunately, we won't be getting that right away, and not really much is changing with this gun. They're just changing the ammo 10 to 12. Cool. All right. I don't use this too much. I do think it's pretty cool that you can shoot like strongholds and weapons with it, but apart from that, something about the weapon is just not satisfying. It almost needs like a full rework. I don't know. Either way, moving on. Okay, so the next part of this article is a great read, but what sucks about this is it's all future updates, and we don't have an exact timeline. So unfortunately, I don't know exactly when this stuff is going to come out. I think it could be as early as, you know, early next year or later. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. So basically everything that we've read up until this point, that's all coming out on Tuesday, minus the little Disruptor change. And then all of this is sometime in the future. I'm not going to read everything in full detail, but they basically touch on everything that we want, a lot of things that we want to hear, at least, like aiming improvements for M&K, right? Like getting, you know, lower latency, better aiming and tracking at M&K, I think is a massive change people are waiting for. Red Reticle, right now, Red Reticle is exclusive to Xbox, and it's not on PC. It has something to do with preventing anti-cheat is the reason why they didn't have Red Reticle on PC. It says that, well, bringing it back may open the game up to new cheating vectors. We want to still enable this to support PC players. If cheats come up, then they might have to, you know, reconsider, and hopefully we don't see cheats, but they're trying to bring back Red Reticle, basically. When you aim on a target, Reticle turns red. Very simple, seemingly simple adjustment, but hey, you know, it takes time, got to avoid cheating. Scroll wheel changes. I know people are having issues here where you turn the scroll wheel, you swap too many times. This should hopefully fix it so you can YY with precision. A walk key, I think this is awesome, considering on M&K you got 2 speeds for walking. You got full crouch speed and full walking speed. On controller, you've got more precision control. You can, you know, tilt the stick and kind of tiptoe, and I think people often underrate how useful it can be to have that precision and to walk more slowly. So having a separate key for M&K so you can actually, you know, walk at more of a medium speed. I'm not quite sure how they're going to roll it out, but I think it's awesome that they are implementing it, and then all of this will work on Xbox as well. It's not just strictly on PC. Here we've got the whole desync section, right? This is like the biggest thing they honestly need to talk about. It's unfortunate it's happening in the future, but they do touch on desync, on blank shots, and getting shot around walls and corners. I know that happens to all of us. On ghost melees, right? This is super prevalent. On some of the issues that they seem to experience kind of, you know, fixing and understanding these bugs, like the fake reload bug. Apparently the client shows that they've completed the reload, but the server never received the final reload confirmation, likely due to a reload being interrupted. So it thinks their weapon is empty, basically. So your screen says you have a full weapon or full reloaded weapon, but the game doesn't know that. So when you're shooting, you're not actually shooting anything. That's why you're getting blank shots. So like, I guess there's a lot of testing, there's a lot of behind the scenes that goes into fully understanding, you know, what's creating the issue so that they can accomplish, you know, make a fix. I get it, right? It's nice to see some transparency here. It's nice that they want to address everything. It looks like the blank shots are going to be fixed first. They're trying to deal with ghost melees. They know how unfun it is. I like all this, you know, all this transparency, just timelines. When's it happening, right? Sooner rather than later. Hopefully we can see some of these updates because these are big issues. These are really important. The community's been waiting on this for a while. We got vehicle desync as well. I don't really use vehicles too much, but apparently there's vehicle desync. I think they might actually be taking out the recent glitch with the vehicle launching as well, which is unfortunate. I honestly think they should keep it in. I see like Mint Blitz and other creators, they'll launch themselves off, like they'll get like crushed by a vehicle and go sailing across a map. It's a very Halo thing, you know, like it's It's kind of goofy, but I like it. I think it's pretty cool, though they might be removing that too, unfortunately. Got balance updates. These are in the future. The drop weapon combo, they're getting rid of it. They're going to keep the timing. Instead of having a quick swap, it's going to be the same as swapping weapons when you drop your weapon. This is unfortunate. I've made YouTube videos about this, and I know that there is a unique kind of skill gap or like some unique nuance in here in being able to quickly drop your weapon and swap and get like a combo kill. But it is very powerful. It's not very difficult to use. At this point, the entire competitive community has collectively given up on it. Nobody's dropping weapons. I'm not dropping weapons anymore, so I can understand why they're getting rid of it. It is a shame to get rid of nuance. You always want to kind of try to preserve it in some way, and I've offered alternatives on how they might be able to do that, but ultimately it just sounds like it's just going to get patched, unfortunately. So we're moving on. I get it, but, you know, unfortunate. The thruster getting changes as well. They're saying it's a little too strong in 1v1 engagements and it's tipping the scales a little too much. I can understand that. I do think if you have a thrust and somebody else doesn't have a thrust, it's like an auto win button in a 1v1 gunfight. You just press it and you change direction so quickly, so suddenly. With Halo Infinite's aiming, it's hard to track and win. I don't mind them making adjustments here. I don't like that the thruster is super one-dimensional, is my issue with the thrust right now. All it does is just press the button, you thrust. That's all you do with it. Halo 5's thrust was more dynamic. There was like more to it. You could thrust slide. Like, you should be able to thrust slide in this game. Maybe not get a big boost, but just having a seamless connection between slide and thrust would be a nice adjustment with the thrust. In Halo 5, you can thrust off of corners, like edges, and go flying. Just like little nuances and ways to make this like unique and interesting rather than just like a one-dimensional thrust button, I think. They're updating the energy sword. This is a big change we've been waiting on. They're changing the melee trade logic on the energy sword so that when you melee somebody and you're both weak, you trade with each other rather than the sword surviving with a sliver of health. That's been a huge issue in competitive. It's the main reason why the sword is currently GA'd, why pros aren't using it, is because they're not trading when they're using it. It's just too powerful. So I really like this. It might give the sword a chance in competitive. Once again, the sword is always going to be powerful, but from a spectator standpoint, the sword is one of the most exciting weapons, one of the most unique weapons to just watch and you know, enjoy. So I hope they bring it back. I hope this gives the sword a chance again in competitive. And then they got respawn timers. They're changing the respawn timers to make weapons on the map spawn a little bit less frequently, which is great. Honestly, I think one of the big issues with the Mangler, why the Mangler was so controversial, is it spawned so frequently. It was so readily available. Now that it's a little bit less available, you'll see more skillful encounters being prioritized. And also, when you have the sandbox, you'll prioritize, or you'll appreciate it more, right? Because you've got it less. So I think this is a really good change as well. And I think these are all great changes, to be honest. I just don't know exactly when they're coming, right? These are all future updates. So hopefully getting some sort of a timeline on when in the future we can expect this, I think would be great. I think it's awesome to see transparency from 343 on this stuff. They're finally addressing so many important things we've been waiting on. Most of this article is honestly a W, so I'm really happy with it. It's really just the snap sliding, man. It's the one thing that really upsets me, especially with Forge about to come out. On Tuesday, we got Forge coming out, and I know some people are saying, like, oh, you know, snap sliding could break the flow of my Forge map or whatever. I don't think that's what's going to happen. Like, let's play devil's advocate. What would snap sliding do for Forge creators who build around the snap slide, right? Like, how sick would a Forge movement course be if I could snap slide and curve slide and hit all the tech on a map that's designed around the tech? Like, I just think there's a ton of potential here for the community to go wild and get creative. And the thing about Forge is it gives the community the opportunity to create whatever experience they want. If you don't want to sprint, if you don't want to slide in Halo, just make a map built around none of that, and then make a custom game mode around none of that, which is basic, you know, no sprint, no slide. It's about having flexibility and options, and Snap Slide takes away some of that creative expression in the end of the day. You guys know I could go on forever. I think it's a long video at this point, so I'm going to end it here. Overall, I'm happy to see this article. Overall, I'm excited about the update coming out. I'm excited to try the new BR and just have Infinite, you know, feel different, feel like a new experience. Let me know what you guys think. Are you excited about the update? Are you looking forward to this? What do you think of the Snap Slide changes? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Do you not care? Either way, that's it for me. If you guys like this content, make sure to sub, make sure to like, check out my other videos. Good luck on the way. I'll see you again soon.